Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I have a very interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Ketuo Telson. I'm going to tell you guys right now, this is the nicest that this is going to look for the entire review because I am going to get my fingerprints on it. What you're seeing here is actually a strip of zirconium that has been laid into the scales. You can see here on this side, I've already got my fingerprints on it. Zirconium, especially like the polished stuff, the blackened polished zirconium is usually a material that you will only find on much more expensive knives. I'm not saying there's absolutely nothing else out there that matches this in price, but this is one of the least expensive knives that has a pretty large chunk of zirconium laid in, that's also sporting incredible fit and finish, execution, and really nice other, secondary materials as well. It's really impressive, and in that way, it is kind of unique. And I was really surprised to see this come in at the price that it came in at. I will link it down below. Depending on when you're watching this video, it may or may not be available. Thank you so much to Ketuo for sending this in. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. So who is Ketuo? They are a brother company to Reich Knife. So I would venture to guess the exact same OEM. Who is Reich? If it is Reich, or they just use some unnamed OEM, it's essentially the same thing. And the fit and finish is definitely displaying that 100%. This is a very, very nice knife. Let's go ahead and measure it. Overall length is coming in at about 8 inches, and the blade length is coming in, I'm gonna call that about 3.65. Cutting edge is 3.5 on the dot. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons up against the Ontario. I guess we're starting off with the PM2 today. That's what I grabbed, the PM2, and up against the Spyderco Para 3. So you can see here, this is definitely what I would call a full-size knife. Let's go ahead and now put it up against the Ontario Rat Model 1 and the Ontario Rat, stuck to the magnet there, Ontario Rat Model 2. Let's put it up against the Demco 80-20.5. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Definitely very similar in overall size to the Ritter Hogue. And last but not least, the Benchmade Bug Out. How is the action on this guy? Again, apologizing for putting fingerprints on it. The action is wonderful, extremely smooth, extremely controlled. There's a noticeable difference between knives like this that are smooth and falsetty, and just a knife that's kind of falsetty because, the pivot's loosey-goosey and it's just gravity assisting it. This is obviously very, very well tuned. The detent is also very nice. So we give you guys a look here. Very nice. Flipper tab is shaped in a way that allows you to really get that full satisfactory flipping experience off of it. You can also, I believe, use it. Look how they do this indentation. I've never seen anything like that before. This slot in the blade is really cool. It's like a tetrahedron made an impact mark on the blade, and I believe, I thought I could get it. I think really it's going to be more of an aesthetic thing. I may have successfully done it once and then told myself in my head, like, I can definitely get that again. I don't think so. I think you're going to be flipping it 100% of the time, which is fine because the flipper tab works perfectly. Access to the lock bar is very, very good. And there is, to my complete and total satisfaction, no double clutch. So this is going to be a nice experience for most people. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. It obviously runs on bearings. I don't know if I said that. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3, it's about the same. Length and height up against the PM2 and the Para 3. You can see here that this isn't really going to be, really cumbersome carry profile. Lengthwise, it is a bit longer than the Para 3. Height-wise, it's still shorter in all areas. Length and height-wise versus the PM2 is definitely smaller. At the most the same thickness, so it shouldn't be too bad compared to those knives. Materials, we are looking at what is now fingerprint-coated zirconium, titanium, anodized titanium for some of the hardware. Then we have a titanium backspacer and what I can only assume is It's either vapor blasted, it's probably more of a glass blasted blade, which is really, really nice. Man, that looks good. Whatever they're doing to finish the blade here is just really pleasing to look at. The blade, this knife truly looks next generation, and that's something I'm excited about. If this is any indication of the direction that Telson wants to move into, or that Reich wants to use Telson to move into, I think this is great. I just think the whole thing is just beautifully finished. Every edge is nicely knocked down. I mean, these areas right here are not, just chamfered. They're actually sort of concave. Same on this side. Everything is just really, really nice to look at. I'm a huge fan of how they did that. But anyways, yeah. Titanium, zirconium, more titanium, and M390 that's been finished beautifully. Let's go ahead and weigh it. Is it milled out for weight reduction? Actually, no. And that makes sense because of the slots that are cut to accept the zirconium inlays. So the weight on this guy is coming in at 4.41 ounces, which honestly is surprising considering how much zirconium is on this knife. If you don't know, zirconium tends to be extremely heavy, which is why there's two reasons why we don't see it on a lot of knives. Number one, it's usually really expensive. Number two, it's really heavy and it throws off the balance. But this isn't super heavy, heavier than some knives that are about this size. The zirconium is definitely making it a little bit butt heavy, but again, less than I thought. This is about where it's balanced right here, which is pretty close to where your index finger is going to be in the primary position. So I don't have much of an issue with that, right? Do with that what you will. Let's go ahead and get out my tools for a hardware check. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. Where is the thing? Are we looking at a T8? Can we see it? I can never see it on this bit. The pivot is almost certainly a T8. Being careful because I really don't want to hit that zirconium. Not that I doubt that I would mark it up because it's pretty hard. But I just don't want to bump into it. The other screws are going to be T6. Unfortunately, there's just a couple on each side, even including the pocket clip screw, which is really nice. This pocket clip cannot be flipped over to the other side because it is nested into the zirconium there, and it also is not a symmetrical clip. But we do have minimal hardware, which is really, really nice. So very easy to take apart. As long as you have the good quality tools and a place to put your hardware, you should be good to go. Let's go ahead and measure blade stock thickness. I'm going to guess that's 125 to 135. It's always hard to judge. I could be wrong though. Could be smaller. Yeah, it's actually thinner. It's only 116 thousandths, probably 115. So yeah, on the thinner side there. Have we gone through everything? I think that we have. Let's go ahead and move into the meat and potatoes here. So ergonomically, it's pretty comfortable, right? I mean, I think this is more really going for design versus, absolute ultimate comfort, but the design does yield fairly comfortable ergonomics. The edges are still, even at their sharpest corners, they're still nicely knocked down. Fills the hand nicely. There's really just one grip. It's not like you can choke forward or choke back, and it's fairly comfortable in that grip as far as, this profile generally goes. We do have a milled clip that has been knocked down at the edges, so that guy's flat right there and not really creating any hot spots. Honestly, the position of my thumb in relationship with my index finger, it feels very natural. So this is good. Everything about the knife feels nice. There's not a whole lot of lock-in and there's no texturing, right? So it's just the natural curvature of the handle. But it's good, right? I mean, is this a knife you could potentially drop? Yeah. But do I feel like it's going to fly out of my hands? No. It's generically comfortable, but the fact that pretty good ergonomics couples with, in my opinion, fantastic aesthetics is something that I'm, totally okay with. I just have to wipe this off because I feel like I'm doing this knife such an injustice. And people are going to point out, if it's so pretty that you feel constantly compelled to wipe it off, then what's the point? It depends on what you want in a knife, right? It depends on why you're watching. If you're watching my channel, you know that I'm a design reviewer. If you clicked on this video, at least some part of your subconscious cares for the aesthetics, so you can't really make that argument because you're already here. Welcome to the party. You're here whether you like it or not, right? So if you don't like things that are so shiny that putting fingerprints on them is going to make them not shiny, then you're probably not going to like this knife and you really don't have to watch anymore, right? But if you don't care, you plan to use this knife and eventually the fingerprints are just not going to bother you, then okay, right? I mean, most of the time you can just wipe them off anyway. So it just depends on how much you're going to let that bother you and what you're actually going to do with it. Some people are going to collect this, but the fact that it is the price that it is tells me that plenty of people will 100% use it, right? So it's an individual kind of thing. I love the details on the pivot and the accents with the pivot color. I think blue goes really, it's like rich electric blue, goes really good with the blasted titanium and the polished zirconium, especially considering the blade is also polished. Just looks really nice. I wish that they had gone ahead and done a polished blue backspacer to give it that extra oomph, you know, or go ahead and do a polished zirconium backspacer, though that would have thrown off the balance a bit more. But I think that it would have been really cool to go ahead and do the pocket clip. You know, they could have left the pocket clip alone, that's fine. But at least the backspacer I think would have looked nice, but that's okay. That's just a preference thing. It's really cool that they didn't just leave the ooh and ah area to the handle. They really did extend it to the blade. That really is just a magnificent blade. If you want to reduce it to its simplest form, it's an elongated sheep's foot or reverse tanto, right, with some belly. But I think the finish and especially that sort of indented tetrahedron shape on the blade just really give it some character that we don't normally see. I like it a lot. And on top of that, I mean, all the pretty things aside, it is an absolutely functional blade shape. This is one of the best blade shapes for general EDC stuff, and I think it actually accentuates the M390 composition really, really well. They are heat treating this the same way that everybody else in the industry is heat treating it, which is 59 to 61. I've always maintained that I personally think that 59 is too low, and M390 starts out in the good zone at 60 and should be heat treated somewhere between 60 and 62. But, you know, that's just my opinion, so you can do whatever you want to do with that. The blade does get beautifully thin down to the edge, and it is beautifully sharpened. We do have a nice taper down to a pretty thin tip. This is going to be a really, really nice utilitarian blade if you choose to use it. I think the way that they put Telson on there is fairly classy. I think it would have been better if they just left it off there because there's so much here to look at that's beautiful. That's really the only thing that's on there. Kind of wish maybe, you know, we have Ketuo here, and they probably could have just left it at that. I don't really think that you should be putting the name of the knife on the knife. Like, that's just odd, right? But okay, it's on there, and it's not the worst place in the world. The rest of it is open for you to look at and appreciate, right? So no big deal there. Let's see here. We have a backspacer that looks pretty good. It kind of follows the design and is also kind of doing its own thing. It's not the worst thing in the world that they have Ketuo right here. Honestly, no branding is always better aesthetically than any branding, but the way that they did it is not terrible, right? There is a little bit of a lanyard slot, which, you know, it's kind of, all of this is very Reiki in the way that they like to kind of go above and beyond with lines. They don't like to leave things perfectly flat or perfectly straight. They kind of like to let everything flow together and connect together. And the way that they've done it is just really, really nice. The pocket clip also looks good. It's kind of neat that they've matched up these lines here with the relief cuts on the lock bar. It's kind of cool. I don't know that the pocket clip perfectly matches the rest of the knife, kind of the same way as the backspacer. That's probably up for debate. The holes, I think, are the things that are kind of throwing me because it's the only hole on the entire knife, right? But okay, not that big of a deal. The pocket clip functionally is very, very good and rides on the smoothest surface, which is the polished zirconium inlay. And it rides, you know, about medium, which is fine. The carry depth is fine. In and out of the pocket, it's very, very easy. We do have a titanium lock bar, and I need to look in here because I think, and is the flashlight going to be gone today? It is going to be gone. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to look inside there, and we can see that there is, in fact, a steel lock bar insert, and the screws are completely and totally hidden underneath that, which is nice. They're hiding that screw just for your aesthetic pleasure, I guess. You can also see that it very much does lip underneath here. So this zirconium acts as sort of the over travel stop, which is fine. The actual lockup percentage coming in at something like 25 to 30%, which is also just great. We do have a little bit of shouldering wrapping around a stop pin in its traditional spot. There is no blade play up, down, left, or right, no lock stick, no pivot lash, no double clutch, extremely smooth and controlled in here. And like I said, a nice detent with a perfectly centered blade. No detent lash. Let me wipe this off real quick before I set it down and give you guys my final thoughts. Boy, oh boy, this is really, really cool. Now, not everybody likes a knife with a really shiny aesthetic. You know, some people say, I don't like things that are mirror polished, and the zirconium is all but mirror polished, and the blade is super duper reflective. There's definitely a cheap way to do it, and there's a classy way to do it. And I think that this entire knife is leaning much more towards the classy side of things. There are two versions of this knife that are less expensive. They make them in a red and blue G10 Damascus for the inlay. Everything's the same except for the inlay. And they make a black and green G10 Damascus for the inlay, which is odd. That's interesting that those are the other materials. I think they should have done like a plain carbon fiber, like a marbled carbon fiber. But okay, whatever. The cool thing is that the base version of this knife costs about $250 with the G10 Damascus and the sort of glass blasted blade. That's what I'm going to call it. And that's an okay price, right? It's not bad. Very, very nice, Reich quality knife. The amazing thing to me is that if you want the zirconium version, it comes in at $285, which is literally $35 more. I am used to, it's like if you want the G10 or the carbon fiber or the plain tie, then it's this. And if you want zirconium, it is $150 more or whatever. Or maybe for a couple of little pieces, you maybe pay $100 more. $35 more for some zirconium. Wow. Yeah. That's worth that all day. Now listen, if you don't care for elements like this that add nothing to the utility of the item, which it doesn't. This is purely aesthetic, right? But you're in this territory. You're already here. At least part of you cares about it because you're here, right? So make that decision for yourself. But as far as competition goes, as far as other knives that are offering the same model but with zirconium, if you choose to purchase it, this is extremely competitive. And it's not like it's just some ho-hum knife with zirconium in it. No, it's a really, really nice design. It's very well thought out. The blade looks amazing. It's very functional, right? This is really, really nice, functional pocket jewelry that comes in at a reasonable price. It's one of the nicer knives that I've seen for the money out there. And obviously it's only possible if it's manufactured in China. I mean, you take this exact same thing, you're going to have people crying and complaining and saying it's not true and it's a big conspiracy and blah, blah, blah. No, you make this in the United States, it's going to cost way more. You're looking at triple best case scenario. Absolutely. I don't care what anybody says. You are not going to get this made in the United States for this price. The only way that this happens with all of these finishes, this level of execution, and I'm not just talking about the materials. I'm talking about the way that they shape it, the way that they machine it, the way that they, finish it, the way that all the tolerances come together. This exact level of execution, if you made this exact knife in the United States, you would be lucky to find it for triple. There's just no way. This is extremely cool. I think that people who are interested in this territory, this zone, this caliber of knife will love this, and it is extremely recommendable to them. Even just as a tool, as a day-to-day tool, I think that those people will find that there's a lot of value here as well. This is extremely nice, and it's not, they didn't get zany or wacky with it. I think the only thing that it's really lacking is just a decent lock-in because it's pretty slippery. And it, putting Telson on the blade and having the backspacer and pocket clip not perfectly matched with the design, in my opinion, that's kind of subjective. It's got a couple of quirks, but largely this is very, very well done. I don't know what to think about the weird G10 Damascus versions. If you like those, go for them, but I think this is far and away the best version, and it's just very, very impressive. I really don't have any other criticisms here. It's nice to see something that I don't normally see. This is the type of stuff that makes what I do really, really fun. And I am very interested to see what Ketuo and Reich do in the future. I've seen a few hints of what they've got coming down the pipeline, and boy, they're going to be turning some heads. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, but it's really cool. And if you want to check it out, I'll make sure it's linked in the description. If it sells out, I have no idea if they will come back, but I would suggest that you keep an eye on their website and on their Instagram for new things that come out in the future. This is going to go on my most recommended knives playlist for sure. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was an awesome knife. Thank you again to Ketuo/Reich for sending this in for me to take a look at. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do of course have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.